Hey guys, it's the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for August 20th, 2024. We're gonna be doing another fantasy football mock draft. This one's 12-team PPR. Before we intro our guest, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store, and I'm going to post the link to this mock draft here in the chat, so you guys get first dibs here. And then once I'm done the intro, then I will tweet it out. And then we'll get it started. So in addition to liking and subscribing, also please consider buying stuff in our merch store. As you can see, we have a ton of t-shirts here. Most of them are about $18, $19, which I always say, it's like, in this economy, a high quality t-shirt, which is like, I'm wearing one right now. Like these shirts have lasted me like 3, 4, 5 years. $18, $19 is pretty cheap. So, you guys could just pick this up, and it would help us out a lot. Also, please consider super chats, super stickers. That really helps us out too, because these YouTube ads pay nothing. It's like 61 cents is the last show we had without any super chats, super stickers. So it's like a quarter of the way to a McDonald's cheeseburger, which is pretty sad. You guys have been awesome. Slew, John Sanders, Germ. You guys have been so great recently. Also, Kevin Kovac, Degeneron in the past. Any further contributions will be really appreciated. Also, you can go to Amazon and buy my book. It's called Jerks of the College Years. If you like Jerks of the Week, which is a section on my website where I make fun of people I see at like the gym or the neighborhood, this is the same thing, except it's my stories from my college years. I spent 6 years at Penn State. So as you can imagine, I ran into a lot of weird people out there. So Jerks of the College Years on Amazon. Also, my other book is how the 2020 MVP was stolen, which is the story about how Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers. You can get that on Amazon as well. But we are joined tonight by Mike Lucchine, owner of NFLRoughDraft.com. Mike, how's it going?
It's going great. And Walt, I love doing these mock drafts with you. So thanks for having me back again this year.
Yeah. Loved doing it last year. Thought we'd do it again. Do you want to intro yourself for anyone who might not know you or your site?
Yeah, so I'm Mike Lucchine. I used to work at ESPN Stats and Information back in the day. It's probably been like 15 years ago at this point. But I got sick of working late hours and, decided that I wanted to keep this, NFL draft stuff going as a hobby. So I started NFLRoughDraft.com with my close friend, Ray Mencio. And we've been one of the most accurate draft websites when predicting the top 100 players to go in each draft for almost 20 years at this point. I think WalterFootball might be the only football website that's older than NFL Rough Draft at this point. But I'm really big into fantasy football as well. I play a lot of high stakes FFPC. I've got over 50 dynasty teams. So nice. Yeah, always happy to talk football.
Yeah, we both been around a while, so it's pretty cool to collaborate like this. You said you have 50 dynasty teams. How do you like manage all of them? It seems like that would be such a headache, or at least for me. I don't know. But it's probably, I assume it's fun because you do it. So how do you do that?
So, it's funny. I get that a lot, but with dynasty leagues, it's actually a lot easier than your typical season-long redraft league because you don't really have to worry as much about waivers. You have really deep rosters. Like, for example, actually, right before I hopped on here, I just made two back-to-back picks in a 35-round, 2-quarterback, 35-player roster dynasty startup. I just drafted Raheem Blackshear. Nice. And Kobe's probably not even gonna. I don't even know if he's gonna make the team. So it makes waivers pretty easy. I don't really have to worry about what's on the wire throughout the season.
That's incredible. Did you say Kobe, the receiver from the Eagles? I assume. Yeah. That's funny. And then Raheem Blackshear, nice. That's awesome. Man, that's. You're right though. Like you really don't have to worry about waivers if you're drafting those guys. It's kind of insane. A few comments here. Jalen Warren, LOL. And so was asking, why are you laughing at Jalen Warren? So I assume it's because Jalen Warren got banged up and Matthieson was always on Kenny for Jalen Warren. Mega Alexandria says, what's the roster in this mock? 2 running back, 2 receiver, 1 flex. Yes, that's it. Not 3 receivers. So yeah, you start 2 running backs, 2 receiver, 1 flex. So that's the format that we're going to do. Right, so we're starting to get some people in here. Before we start recording, we talked about how we thought that drafting in the second half of the first round was easier than the first half because, like, when you get to round 2, you get like toward the end of the second round, you get like it starts to like thin out pretty quickly, which is pretty unique this year. And you agree with that, right? Like, that's how you feel about that too?
Yeah, I can't remember a year like this one where when you get to the back half of the second round, yeah, I'm straying pretty far away from what you see on most sites ADP. I like a lot of the guys actually that were in the second round last year, and they kind of didn't hit last year, but for reasons like they were banged up, like T Higgins, for example. I mean, T Higgins is going in the 4th, 5th round in a lot of leagues. And I mean, he had a terrible year last year, but it was kind of just messed up by injury. He's still T Higgins. He's still been a wide receiver 1 a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, not just his injury, but also Joe Burrow. He started the year with the calf injury, and then he got hurt toward the end. In the middle of the season, he got lost for the year. So, yeah, it's definitely there are definitely some players. I think their ADP is way off. I talked about this, I think on Tuesday with Smitty from the Fantasy Football Show. I think Josh Jacobs is going way too late because he said that on Underdog, Josh Jacobs' ADP is like 3rd round or 4th round, and I was just flabbergasted by that because I think there's a very good chance I think that Josh Jacobs leads the NFL in rushing yards, and I'm happy to get him at like the end of the first round, like at 203. If I get him, I'm fine with that. Like, I like him there. I just don't understand why he's going so late. So, yeah, Higgins, Jacobs, like it feels like a lot of players, their ADP is just way off. So, I don't know how you feel about Jacobs. Do you agree with me on Jacobs that evaluation, or do you think?
I like Jacobs. I have Jacobs a little bit later than that, but I think what you said makes perfect sense. You've got AJ Dillon there. He hasn't been very good at all. They drafted Marshawn Lloyd. Marshawn Lloyd's got to show he can hold on to the ball. He had 8 fumbles in college and never really had a full-time role. He was kind of like he was a starter, but he never had like 250 carries in a season or 200 carries in a season. I think he had some, saying this off the top of my head, my draft prep stuff is a little bit foggy at this point. But I want to say he only had like 250 touches for his whole career and had 8 fumbles. And now he's banged up. So it certainly opens the door for Josh Jacobs in an offense where they've kind of used multiple backs for a long time to have more of a bell cow role. And, he's certainly going to be involved in the passing game as well.
Yeah. And plus, Lloyd's hurt also. And Dillon was so bad last year. It looks like we have a full room. So let's start this. And we have a minute per pick here. We did Fantasy Football Calculator last year, and we decided to move the sleeper just because it's so much better. Because you can get kicked out very easily in Fantasy Football Calculator, and they can't get back in. And if the computer drafts, then the computer drafts 4 quarterbacks in a row. So you took Breece Hall at 104. Want to talk about that pick?
Yeah, so my 101 this year is a tie between McCaffrey, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson. It's sort of like pick which one you like best. And I think when you're looking at running backs in fantasy football, you want to get guys who are going to get 80, 90 targets. They're cheap points, right? Alvin Kamara was terrible last year, but Derek Carr checked it down to him. I think he had like 80 targets, 85 targets. Alvin Kamara finished as I believe the PPR running back 4 overall if you go by points per game. Obviously, he missed some time. So, you look at Hall, he's going to get a ton of targets. He's fully healthy. And Aaron Rodgers funnels targets to running backs. So, certainly like his situation there.
Yeah, I love Breece Hall. He's number 1 in my rankings. I was actually going to ask you who you would take at number 1. You said you have a tie between Hall, Robinson, McCaffrey. So if you did have the number 1 pick in this draft, like who would you take? Because you said you had the tie there.
I love the McCaffrey pick. Funky Dan, nice pick right there. I think I would have actually gone with Hall or Bijan. I mean, it took Hall over Robinson. It's really a coin flip. Just kind of based on the fact that, you're paying, well, you're hoping that you're getting what's going to happen. You want what the player who's going to do, the most this year. You're not paying for what's already happened. And Christian McCaffrey is a very, very solid 101, but he's 28 years old. He's a little bit banged up. I don't know if it's much to be concerned about, but at some point running backs sort of break down, and 28, isn't. He might still have another year or two of magic left in the tank, but I feel like Hall and Robinson are sort of just about ready to enter that elite fantasy football sort of phase of their career.
Yeah, I think with McCaffrey, I mean, he's 28, but it feels like in football years, he's like 33 with all the injuries he's had, all the workload he's had recently. Looks like Trump Best is going to timeout, unfortunately. Hopefully soon. But yeah, Jefferson got drafted. It's tough. McCaffrey's almost a member berry pick. I kind of make fun of those. Not quite. I mean, he's still great, but Breece, like I said, Breece Hall's number one for me. What he did last year as a receiver out of the backfield in the second half of the year, once he got over the ACL injury, it kind of reminded me of Marshall Faulk. Not quite as a runner, but as what he was doing receiving wise, it was pretty insane. So, and that wasn't even with Aaron Rodgers. Like, he was just carrying the offense with Zach Wilson there. So I'm pretty excited about what he can do this year. St. Brown just went. Garrett Wilson just went. I am on the clock right now. Let's see. Got to remove Garrett Wilson. So I'm in a spot here where I'm looking at my top board. They are the top 12 players. The first four are running backs, but then there's only one in the top 12 who's a receiver. So I'm going to take him and just get one of the running backs on the way back. I'm going to take A.J. Brown. There's a run of receivers here. I love A.J. Brown this year. I love the Eagles this year. I bet them to win the Super Bowl 17-1. And, there's no reason to hate A.J. Brown. Like, he was on pace. Like, as crazy as Tyreek Hill's season was last year, A.J. Brown was basically keeping pace with Tyreek Hill until things started falling apart for the Eagles late in the year. And I don't think that's going to happen this season. So what are your thoughts on like Brown, or what would you have done at 110?
I've got 110 in an FFPC draft a couple weeks from now. And please let A.J. Brown be there at 110 because I think that's an absolutely fantastic pick. I've got him 7 on my board. I've got my 10 would have been Garrett Wilson, just a slight drop off to him. But A.J. Brown, like you mentioned, last year was fantastic. Now they get Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore always runs a really fast-paced offense. Okay, so the possibility of him repeating that is fairly strong. You look at his division. You've got Cliff Kingsbury with Washington. You've got the Cowboys always run a fast-paced offense. You've got some potential for some shootouts there. I love that pick. I think that was a slam dunk right there.
Yeah, what I was the top guy on my board was Jahmyr Gibbs, actually. And I was hoping he would come back to me. But like I said, I had so many running backs there. Barkley, Taylor, Gibbs, Williams, and then Jacobs. Those are the 5 I had with A.J. Brown in my top 6 for that pick. So ended up getting Josh Jacobs on the way back. Like I said, would have preferred Gibbs, but I'm very happy with Jacobs. I love Jacobs this year. So we have Pakua and Pacheco. And this is the point right now. Pacheco's the last guy to go in my next tier. I guess this is tier 2 or something. And then I don't really have anyone in tier 3. Like, there's no tier 3. It seems to be missing this year. I don't know what happened for tier 3 to be removed, or maybe they're just going later, like you said, with like T. Higgins, for example. But I mean, you're going to be up right after D Wolf here. Is this like? Is this how, like, it's breaking down? Is this what you're used to drafting the spot? Because this is basically how it's gone for me every time.
Yeah. So in a lot of leagues I've seen, this is a little bit running back heavy so far. Actually, the second round's sort of been littered with sort of some of the older receivers. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to keep that going right here, actually, with Cooper Kupp.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp didn't get picked yet, right? Is his ADP just really low here?
Yeah, it's pretty low, I think. I think you have to probably type him in.
There you go. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of older receivers sort of going in this position. In FFPC, it's a 1.5 point PPR for tight ends. So this is also where you sort of get a run on tight ends as well. But yeah, I went Cup there just because, he's, by all accounts, he's fully healthy this year. Nakua's a little bit banged up. I'm sure he'll be fine by the opener. But that offense is going to support two really fantasy relevant wide receivers. And the reports are that Cup is back to 100%. He's 31 years old, so it's a little bit of a gamble. But at the same time, if he somehow it gets back to where he was before last year, that's a bargain. If he's where he was last year, that was still right around like a wide receiver too, like wide receiver 24 overall or something like that. Which, that's not what you're looking for there, but that's also not the end of the world. It's not going to lose the league for you.
Right. And I don't know what else you could have even done. Look at the players who went after you, like Devon Achane gets like 10 carries a game and is pretty brittle. Marvin Harrison Jr. is just a rookie. Like, yeah, he might be great, but we don't know. And plus Kyler Murray tends to get banged up. I'm very concerned about the Saints offense this year. I think things could go very wrong for them. Their best lineman is gone. Ryan Ramczyk's gone for the year. Their lineman they drafted in the first round is dealing with back spasms suddenly, or his back tightness. And then the left tackle can't block. They have bad interior blocking. I feel like the Saints just may not score at all. I like Waddle. Derrick Henry's the member berry pick that I always joke about. It's like, remember Derrick Henry? I remember Derrick Henry. Yeah, he's super old, and he's playing in an offense missing 3 offensive linemen. That's when they left in free agency. So I really dislike Derrick Henry. And then Nico Collins. Yeah, I mean, there's so many receivers for Houston, but you're up for 304, and you took James Cook. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so first of all, shout out to Drew 3 right before me with Nico Collins. I've actually got Nico Collins going at the end of the first round. I know there's extra target competition there with Diggs, but, CJ Stroud could possibly support 3 top 24 receivers. Nico Collins was just so good toward the end of last year, even when Tank Dell was healthy. I went with James Cook, one, because there's been a little bit of a run on running backs here. But I like Cook a lot. If you look at what he actually did from just a football stats perspective last year, he was fantastic. His problem was he didn't score a lot of touchdowns. I think Josh Allen had 15 rushing touchdowns. Now, Josh Allen's always going to have a lot of rushing touchdowns. It's not going to completely go away. But, even just, 2 or 3 more rushing touchdowns for James Cook, and he's pretty safely, a running back 1. So, it's a little bit earlier than I would normally take him, but we had a run on running backs. I didn't think he'd get back to me.
Yeah, I like Cooks in PPR. Not so much a standard, but it's obviously a different game in PPR because he's such a good receiver out of the backfield. Whereas, if this were just standard, I'd worry about Ray Davis taking goal line carries. But he was the top player on my board when you took him. So Travis Kelce's gone. So the one receiver I like in this range is still here, which is pretty unusual. He's been going earlier in our mock drafts. So unless I missed him, he's still there. Taking Deebo Samuel because, well, first of all, Brandon Ayuk might be traded. Obviously, that's going to have a big impact on him. And second, Christian McCaffrey's dealing with the cap issue. If that is real and he misses time, I think people have forgotten, like, Deebo Samuel used to get a lot of carries. So, if that happens, like, Deebo's going to get more carries than usual, which is, like, not ideal for PPR, but he's still going to get so many touches. So we've had him go at the end of the second round. So kind of puzzled as to why he lasts to 310, but I'm a big fan of him this year.
Yeah, I had him in the Scott Fish Bowl last year. I don't know if you're familiar with that tournament, but they have unique scoring settings, and there were extra points for rushing first downs. And so Deebo Samuel was someone I prioritized as one of my wide receivers. Went 26-3 in large part due to him. That was a great pick right there.
That's rushing. What'd you say? Rushing first downs. That's
rushing first down. So you figure you're going to get a wide receiver who's not going to get a lot of rushing first downs, but
right.
a couple of them will.
Yeah, no, I mean Debo is one of the premium players for that. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm up again, and I always wonder about a quarterback here, just because I hate this range. So you might as well take a quarterback, right? But I think I'm going to pass on that. See what happens with the rest of my team. Man, I just really don't like the players here. I'm going to take Aaron Jones. I guess when he's healthy, he's great. I just you have to worry about his health, I suppose. But he's healthy now. And Minnesota's run blocking is a concern, but I think that he could have a very good season if he stays healthy. But you obviously can't count on that. But you have to take risks, I suppose. So I've kind of cornered the market on NFC North running backs at the moment.
Yeah, and you have to imagine they're going to run the ball a lot with, I know J.J. McCarthy wasn't going to start the year as the starter, but now that he's out, he's on IR, you have to imagine Aaron Jones is going to be a large part of that offense.
Yeah, I would assume so. Ayush asking, just got a trade offer. I trade away Josh Allen and Chase Brown for DJ Moore and Jaden Daniels. 12-team PPR ESPN. He has Josh Allen, Saquon, Kyron Pickens, Zay Flowers, LaPorta. I don't think I'd do this. No, I wouldn't do this. Would you?
That's a tough call. I mean, I guess it depends how you feel about DJ Moore. Jaden Daniels has been pretty good so far. If Chase Brown's the starter, then that's going to look pretty bad. If Zach Moss is the starter and gets most of the carries, then obviously Chase Brown, isn't much in a standard redraft league.
Yeah. Yeah, you just don't know where you're getting with Chase Brown. It's true, but I mean, you don't really know what you're getting with DJ Moore either. He's playing with a rookie quarterback. I assume Caleb Williams is gonna be good, but you don't really know. So there's question marks there, and I feel like Josh Allen is just so proven that I don't know. I think I'll stand pat, but it's pretty close. Like in that quartet, like Josh Allen's the only proven guy because Jane Daniels also a rookie. So. All right, so you're up. You took Dalton Kincaid. I have him. He's my second best player available. So I like to pick. So we want to talk about him?
Yeah, I just think, whenever you can get a positional advantage at tight end, especially in, leagues where you only play like 7 or 8 players, I think you have to do it. Kincaid, obviously, going back to what we were talking about when we were talking about the running backs at the top of the draft, where you want to try to get guys who, they're a value because they haven't quite done it yet. Kincaid certainly fits that bill. He's a dark horse for tight end 1 overall this year, I think. You've got Keon Coleman has been playing all the snaps with the starters in the preseason. Beyond that, Mac Hollins has been playing on the outside. He's really a special teams gunner, who's sort of had a little bit of a chance to play as a starting receiver, but he's not going to be fantasy relevant. You've got Khalil Shakir. He hasn't been playing in 2 receiver sets in the preseason. So I like Kincaid. I think he's got a chance to have a really big year.
Yeah, and the news broke today, a few hours ago, that Curtis Samuel is dealing with a turf toe. So he could be out the first couple of weeks as well. So it's another reason to like Kincaid. I've said this a few times on this stream. I think Kincaid could have a Travis Kelce 2022 type season just because they had nothing at receiver. Like they lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, not just one, but both. And like you said, who do they have? They have an injured Samuel. They have a rookie in Keon Coleman. Shakir could be okay. They just don't have anyone. So, it's going to be James Cook catching passes and Kincaid. As far as like Cook and Kincaid, that clash there, like, are you concerned at all? Like that's like the one thing I'd worry about.
Yeah, I don't worry too much about it. I like to draft players from good offenses, and it's an offense that should score a lot. So I'm sure there'll be weeks where Cook will have good weeks and Kincaid won't do as much, and then vice versa. I got sniped on T. Higgins. I saw
that.
All right, let's see. Devontae Smith got picked too. That was another great pick right there.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see who we have here. All right, I'm going to go Terry McLaurin here.
Okay.
Again, they have one wide receiver. That offense, it's just the preseason, so take it with a grain of salt. But Jaden Daniels looks like the real deal. They've got Cliff Kingsbury, who's a terrible offensive coordinator, but he's great at producing wide receivers who are fantasy football relevant. And you keep hearing Dan Quinn talk about, oh, we need to find a wide receiver too. We need to find a wide receiver too. They don't have a wide receiver too. So McLaurin's coming off of a bad year, but he's also coming off of a year with Sam Howell. So I could see him sort of taking a step forward this year.
Yeah, I think you have to forgive or just forget about everything that happened in Washington last year, just because Sam Howell was so bad. Like, he either held onto the ball way too long and took too many sacks, or he was just dumping balls off because he was tired of taking sacks. Like, it was so brutal to watch. Unless they're playing the Eagles, then they had great games. That was it. Like, they had to be playing like a bottom 5 pass defense to be relevant. But yeah, it was funny when Jacoby Brissett came in those 2 games, like the one game against the Rams, and then the next game I think they were playing against the Jets, if I remember correctly. And with Brissett, McLaurin looked like a real receiver again. So assuming that what we saw out of Jaden Daniels in the preseason wasn't a mirage, I assume that McLaurin's gonna have a great year. I always like worry about the preseason though, because remember, like 4 years ago, Daniel Jones looked like the second coming of Joe Montana, and then last year you had Kenny Pickett looked like Dan Marino, and like throwing touchdowns, like deep touchdowns on every play. And I've learned to just like kind of take preseason with a grain of salt, or much more than a grain of salt. What'd you say?
Yeah, I mean, there was the Logan Thomas year too.
Yep.
Everybody thought Logan Thomas for 1 week in August was this big, day 3 steal. But McLaurin right there, you don't really have a lot of upside, I'd say. I took him at, I believe, wide receiver 26. He's probably a pretty safe bet to finish somewhere between wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 30. He's not going to be a top 10 or 12 wide receiver, but I just like him, so I'd take him here, and especially since Drew 3 sniped me with T. Higgins.
Yeah, that was a really, really good pick. So I'm up now. I just really don't like many of the players here. There's some running backs that are okay. Kind of leaning toward a player that I never thought I would take at this range. Yeah, I think I'm gonna actually. You know what? I'm probably gonna load up on receiver here. So yeah, I'll talk about who I almost took. I'm gonna draft Keenan Allen. Talk about how we just don't know how these rookies are going to perform. Caleb Williams looked great though in the preseason. Again, like this could be mirage, and I could see him losing to Tennessee in week 1. But Keenan Allen has just been such a dependable receiver if he can stay healthy. So I feel like he's going to be utilized like pretty heavily. In PPR, I like him a lot more. But yeah, so there are a few receivers I was considering at this spot.
He was wide receiver 4 overall last year. He's a bargain in drafts this year. He's just, you've had that news sort of circulating the last week or two about, is he out of shape? Is he washed? And then too much was made of, he didn't play really well according to Pro Football Focus on Saturday. But like you said, it's the preseason. He's probably just trying to stay healthy after the last couple of years. So it's just a matter of, he's 32. Does he have another year or 2 left in him?
Yeah, I assume he does. He's one of those receivers where he can play, I feel like, into his mid-30s just because of his skill set. He doesn't rely on his speed too much. Like the speed receivers, they tend to disappear very quickly. Pollard just went. I think that's a good pick. More so in standard, but it's still a decent PPR. Yeah, so there's one receiver I've left in this tier, and he might be gone from this tier just based on what happened. So I'm gonna take the player I was thinking about earlier. This is not something I like to do usually. I'm gonna pull the trigger on Trey McBride here. I like to wait on tight ends just because there's such great value with them usually. Like In the draft we did on, I think it was on Friday. Cole Kmet didn't even get drafted. Luke Musgrave did not get drafted. We've seen Pat Frymuth going like 14th round. Like I just think there's a lot of value with the tight ends just waiting. But McBride was my best player available, and like I'm just not crazy about any of the players left, so might as well go in that direction, I think.
Yeah, I think that's just fantastic value. You could say the same for Joey Russo here with Kyle Pitts, and then certainly Andrews in the last round with Brett SC. You're right. There seems to be a lot of depth this year at tight end, but if you get one of these guys in the top, 5 to 7, and we know that one or two of those guys will bust because that's how it always works at that position in fantasy football. But if you get one of these guys like McBride, or Kyle Pitts goes back to having 1,000 yards because he's got a quarterback now, that's a huge advantage over someone who's playing, Hunter Henry, hoping that he catches a touchdown so he doesn't get half of a point or, 2 points or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It is a big advantage. McBride is so good last year. CJ Stroud is also on my radar. I think quarterback is very deep as well. There have been drafts we've done where Trevor Lawrence hasn't been drafted, which is kind of insane to me. I think he's so many weapons to work with, and he's so talented. It's like no one's drafting him just because there's so many good quarterbacks. Yeah. So okay. So all right, D Wolf is up, and then you're going to be up. So how are you thinking about? What do you think about your team so far? Well, you're up on the clock now. So what do you think?
Let's see. I'm going. It's a little bit early here. I'm between two players here. All right, it's a little bit early, but I'm taking Rome Odunze. I think this year rookie wide receivers have been pushed up a little bit more than I'm comfortable with. If you look at Jamar Chase's year, he was a 4th round pick, and Jamar Chase was certainly just as good of a prospect as these guys at the top of the draft. But now you see Harrison going in the 2nd round. You see Neighbors is sneaking into the 2nd round of some of these drafts, and they're great players, but they're also rookies going in the 2nd round of a redraft fantasy football mock. But Odunze is someone who, back when we were doing our draft coverage for the site, Ray and I had him pretty close to Harrison and Neighbors, and his ADP is a lot lower. I think a lot of that goes back to what you were saying earlier, where you've got a rookie quarterback, but then you've also got Keenan Allen and DJ Moore there, so there are 3 receivers there. They have a couple of pass catching tight ends. DeAndre Swift has a chance to be able to catch some passes there and take some targets away. But I like Odunze in this range, sort of that late 6th or 7th round range, just sort of because of his second half of the season potential. He's one of those guys who's got a chance to be like, you won your league because you had Rome Odunze in the second half of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if Keenan Allen goes down or DJ Moore goes down, like suddenly, if that happened tomorrow, Odunze would be going much higher, So yeah, you're right. I mean, he's your 3rd receiver. So, I mean, technically he's going to be your flex, but you could put someone else there. But in the second half of the year, once there are injuries, you're right. Like that like he could really take off. George Pickens was the receiver I was considering, even though I took him. He'd be my 4th receiver, but I'm just worried about the potential trade. You took Dak Prescott at 704. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I've got Dak Prescott as my fourth quarterback this year. They don't have a running back. They are going to have to throw the ball a lot. I already mentioned Kellen Moore's there. They're going to run a lot of plays. I was talking earlier about how the Eagles run a lot of plays. I'm sorry, they don't have Kellen. The Eagles have Kellen Moore. He used to be with Dallas, but Dallas runs a lot of plays. The Eagles have Kellen Moore now, so they're going to run a lot of plays. And Washington with Kingsbury, that's a fast-paced offense. I think there are going to be a lot of shootouts in the NFC East this year. And so, I think he's a guy who's going to outperform his ADP. You mentioned that quarterback is pretty deep this year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'm probably the last one to draft a quarterback, but I just kind of like the value here since this is, let's see, quarterback 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 7 or 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I have him at 4.
Mm-hmm.
So.
There's some picks in this round I like a lot. I mentioned Pickens. If Ayuk is not traded there, I love that. Javonte Williams looks healthy again. So I mentioned this a lot. I don't like taking running backs on bad teams. But Williams, he can catch passes to the backfield. He can run well. So he might just be an exception to that rule. And he looks good again. Like he looks like 2 years removed from the torn ACL as opposed to last year when he was coming off the torn ACL. So, all right, Zamir White went. It was weird that he was playing the third quarter 2 nights ago, but not like too concerned. And Jalen Warren went. He's a little banged up. He might miss week 1, but I think he'll be back eventually. So I am up now, and the other Tennessee receiver, running back, is still here. Tajay Spears. He got all the third down reps in that one game where they played the starters. So I'm pretty comfortable here taking PPR. If it was standard, I wouldn't. But he's going to be used a lot as a receiver. He was last year with Derrick Henry, so he's definitely going to be used probably even more with Tony Pollard there. It seemed like the split was like 50-50, but like on the first 2 downs, I think it was like Pollard took probably like 2/3 of it. But on every third down, it was Spears. So in PPR, I like Spears in the 7th round.
Yeah, absolutely. He could definitely be the starter there.
Yeah, I like Gene Reed too. Yeah, there's a lot of picks I like here in this 3rd round. Mostert, I didn't like the value with Achane at 210, but Mostert is 7.6, like in comparison. Christian Watson has amazing potential, like if he can stay healthy. But yeah, and Richardson also is another quarterback who has a lot of potential. Jordan Addison, I'm not too crazy about because he could be suspended and they lost their quarterback. So it's kind of a double whammy there. But, 7th round, you have to look at some upside, I suppose. And then Nick Chubb, I definitely don't like, just because he may not even play this year.
He's getting pretty old as well. It's a pretty serious injury along with the age. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think so. Again, he may not even play this year, and even if he does, it feels like they're going to take it easy with him the second half of the year. So if you want to take a shot on him late, I have no issue with that. But in the 8th round, I think you need to get a better player. So Brian Robinson goes. I am up again. And there's a couple quarterbacks here. Actually, of my top 6 players available, 3 are quarterbacks. And I'm pretty confident I can get one on the way back just because of how they've been drafted. So I think we're going to probably take my my final like real running back before we get to the sleepers. And this is a guy I've been drafting in like almost every draft here, and it's going to take him again. His name is Chuba Hubbard. He is the only healthy running back on the team, like Miles Sanders, I don't think counts. And then Jonathan Brooks is going to be out for a while. They said he's going to be out at least until week 4. And given that he's coming off the torn ACL, I don't think he's going to get a lot of work until like week 6, 7, 8. And Hubbard's looked good in training camp. So I like this kind of reminds me to a lesser extent last year when everyone was drafting Jahmyr Gibbs super early, and then people forgot about David Montgomery, and Montgomery handled most of the workload on the ground, at least. I think this is kind of the same sort of deal. And I've seen Brooks go before Hubbard, which is crazy to me. It's not going to play the first month. So
yeah, well, and he's not coming back to an established role either, right? I mean, so he's a great prospect, but this isn't like Jonathan Taylor coming back, through a few weeks. You're talking about a rookie who's never played, and like you mentioned, coming off the torn ACL. Say he misses 4, 5, 6 weeks. Well, week 7, 8, and 9 after that could very easily be just the team easing him in, and Jonathan Brooks might not really take over as the starter until like week 10, 11, 12. And in a league like this, that's kind of too long to hold on to a player who you just can't put in your lineup for any reason.
Mm-hmm.
And David Miles loves to run the ball. So, that's Chuba Hubbard's going to certainly have a role and outperform that ADP for sure.
Yeah. So you took Jackson Smith-Njigba. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think just, you're going to get a second-year bump from him. They got the new offensive coordinator, and, Tyler Lockett is, you mentioned earlier, some of those speedier receivers, they sort of start to break down when they get older. I think he's 31 at this point. Mm-hmm. So I'm sort of looking for a big second-year jump from Smith-Njigba here, and I'm happy to play him. He would be, so if I were setting my lineup, I'd have him week 1 over Rome Odunze.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a good matchup too. Denver's defense is kind of falling apart. But yeah. When you mentioned Tyler Lockett, like that's the guy I was thinking of when I mentioned 31-year-olds who rely on their speed. Like I think Tyler Lockett. I said this a few nights ago. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he's out of the league in like 3 years, just because like the age and how he plays. Like other receivers like that, like Mike Evans too. Like Mike Evans had such a great year last year, but he relies on his speed a lot too, and he's 31, so he scares me as a guy who could fall off as well. But Lockett is kind of like the poster child of that this year. So Funky Dan took Brooks. He didn't like our analysis.
That's not a bad pick in the 9th round. I don't have a problem with that, but I just don't think he's going to be relevant for a very large chunk of the season.
Yeah, I mean, round 9 is kind of like when you take your sleeper. It usually waits around 10, but I don't know how it is for you. I mean, you run a side. Oh, you're up. I'll get into this later. What are you doing here?
I was debating a couple of guys. I'm going to go way off the board here because he's one of my favorite. I can't call him a sleeper because he's not really a sleeper, but I'm taking Blake Corum, and I have a spinny wheel here. Okay. Click on Blake Corum, though. I can assure you of that.
We'll see.
Click on him again.
There we go.
Clear handcuff. He's not someone you could put in your lineup week 1. It's just a matter of Sean McVay likes to use one running back. We've seen it from him forever. So if anything does happen to Kyren Williams, Blake Corum is like, if you were to tell me Kyren Williams tore his ACL tonight, I think Blake Corum finishes the year as one of the top 8 or 9 running backs in fantasy football this year, just because of usage. So, again, unplayable if Kyren Williams is healthy, but a potential league winner if he's not. And, I'll take that in the 9th round when my lineup's already solidified.
Yeah, no, for sure. If Kyren Williams went down for the season tomorrow, Blake Corum would be second round. I assume, maybe early 3rd, but I'd be shocked if he didn't go that early. So yeah, I mean that is, and Kyren Williams tends to get hurt a lot. So obviously on a small sample size, but I think that is a pick that could win you the league. You talked about that with like Rome Odunze, like that, like Blake Corum could be a star for you in the second half of the year. Ricky Pearsall went. So D Wolf, who's has been one of my guests on here. He sniped that for me. I've been taking Pearsall in every draft. I think this is the first time I'm not going to end up with Ricky Pearsall. Kind of bizarre, but I'll cry on the inside a little bit. I love Ricky Pearsall, just because Ayuk is going to get traded. McCaffrey's hurt. Devo tends to get banged up. Like who else is there going to be? So all right. So Jordan, I was going to look at Jordan Love if he didn't get drafted. So we had 2 quarterbacks go here. Again, not sweating it because there's so many good quarterbacks. You can just wait. I'm going to go with a guy who's been going earlier, but he's dropped because of an injury. But the injury is not that bad. Like he should be back somewhat soon. It's going to be Marquise Brown. And I wanted to mention this before. I didn't get to it. Xavier Worthy went in the 5th round. That's the earliest we've seen him. And this is the first mock draft we've done since the Chiefs preseason game where Xavier Worthy made a deep catch. That was from Carson Wentz, but he made some catches with Mahomes as well. So I assumed that he was going to go a lot earlier. But Marquise Brown is, I mean, he's the most established receiver they have on the team. And yeah, he's banged up, but he should be back like week 2 or 3. So I'm fine with him being on the bench for a little bit, and then I could potentially use him as a starter.
Oh yeah, you're going to feel good having any one of those 3 Chiefs starting receivers in your lineup, when they're healthy. And like you mentioned, yeah, okay, maybe he misses week 1 and 2, but that's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Xavier, do you think 5th round is earlier for Worthy? Do you think that's like an overreaction? I mean, I thought he would be drafted earlier for sure.
I feel so. I moved him up in my rankings to let's see, what do I have on my chart? I've got him at the top of the 6th round. I've got him as my wide receiver 1 in the 6th round. So I don't have a problem with the 5th round. Mm-hmm. Just because, again, it's not just the prospect, it's the offense, right? I mean, he's got the talent, but playing in that Chiefs offense with all of those other players around him, he's got a chance to, again, be one of those guys who is a rookie who finishes as a top, 15 to 20 wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he has the potential as well. But I just, it feels like, I don't know, maybe it's sticker shock to me that like 5th round, because we've seen him go 7th, 8th round recently. Mm-hmm. He just jumped up 2 rounds because of one game. I don't know. But you're right. Like he could definitely outplay that ADP for sure.
I think that the Brown injury is helping him a little bit too, because I think people are looking and, they're saying, well, is there still a chance that Rashee Rice could be suspended for a little while? You've got Brown, out a week or 2, maybe Worthy really shines during that time.
Yeah, for sure. So with my 10th round pick, I took Jacoby Myers. I've been drafting him a lot. He is, first of all, I always love Jacoby Myers. He always produces, like, no matter which quarterback he has throwing to him. But I think this year might be different because Devontae Adams might be traded. So if that happens, Myers is suddenly going to be the receiver 1. Not that Adams is necessarily going to be traded, but there's been some buzz there at least. So the Raiders don't meet my expectations. I actually think the Raiders are going to be decent this year. But if I'm wrong about that, then and if they're sellers at the trade deadline, like suddenly Myers in the second half of the year could be a receiver 1. So I like the value of him in round 10.
Yeah, I love Jacoby Myers. I'm just, the quarterbacks there are hurting me. Like they've got Adams, they've got Myers. Even Trey Tucker looks like he has the talent to be, a fantasy relevant sort of wide receiver 4. And then obviously Bowers and Mayer. But with Minshew, and then O'Connell's going to start, and then Minshew's going to start again. And it's going to be tough. But like you said, the key is Devontae Adams. If he gets traded, Jacoby Myers is going to get a big bump. He was good last year. He's a top 24 wide receiver.
Yeah.
So I like that pick a lot in that range as well.
Yeah, you're up here. So What are you doing?
So I'm taking a look here. I think I'm going TJ Hawkinson out for the beginning of the year. 2nd tight end. It's probably my FFPC, tight end premium roots here. But again, I talked about it earlier. I like having the positional advantage. I like, knowing that that I have a guy who could get 8 to 10 targets rather than, the Hunter Henrys and, Noah Fant who are going to get 3 targets and you hope they catch a touchdown. So that's a pick where I'll just stash him on my bench until he finally comes back. The quarterback play is going to be terrible, but he'll get his share of targets and, taking him away from somebody else's team. And I'll be able to play the matchups or if Kincaid, underperforms, he'll help me there. But that's really
not really much more to that pick other than just I like the value. It's the 10th round, and he's one of my favorite tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if he was healthy, he'd be obviously way up there. Although, in my I have a 3-receiver league that I do. I've been in this league since 2003, and I live stream this. And Hawkinson somehow fell to the 7th round to me in the league last year. And I was so happy. I was like, wow, look at this. This is great. And then, of course, he gets injured. I think every player I drafted in that league, like every single one, no joke, except for Chris Olave, got injured.
Now we always have every now and then that's going to happen, right?
Yeah. And I still nearly made the playoffs because Kenny, who's the co-host with me on Wednesday, he dropped CJ Stroud very early in the year. It was like week 3. Just because he needed a roster spot or something. And I picked him up like, oh, the CJ Stroud, my quarterback's already injured. Let me take CJ Stroud. And then he like nearly carried my team to the playoffs. So that was a rough year. So hopefully there's better injury luck. What I was saying before, I was going to ask you, I've been asking this to everyone who has like a football website. Like, do you go into like a real draft and you get sniped a lot by people in your league who like read your site? So I feel like that happens to me a lot.
It doesn't happen to me as much. You have a much, bigger following than I do. Every now and then, especially in my dynasty leagues, the dynasty community is sort of like this really tight knit group of nerds like myself. So, they all know who I like, and every now and then it'll happen there. But in redraft, not so much.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, D Wolf 88 here is one of my best friends. He says Sucker Wolf. He feels like he sniped me a lot. He sniped me a lot in this draft. He took Pearsall, he took Watson, Hurts. Obviously, I don't think Hurts would have made it to me on the way back, but I would have liked him there. Goddard's a tight end I've taken a lot. Not that I was going to take Goddard because I already had that Trey McBride, but yeah, so he's taken all the guys like Dowdle. Like if he made it back to me, I would have taken Dowdle. So yeah, that happens to me so much. I told the story before where I was watching Ryan Matthews' his first preseason game, and he looked great. Yeah, before the injuries, he looked amazing. And I was online. It was super late at night. It was because it was a Charger game, and like it was on AIM. There's one person on my friends list. He was in my league. And I had to tell him, like, dude, Ryan Matthews looks so great. And then we had our fantasy draft the next day, and he's like, he comes up to me in the second round. He's like, hey, Walter, are you gonna be mad if I draft Ryan Matthews? It's like, man, I just told you about him. So yeah, I mean, I was like, dude, whatever you want. I was like, second round's a little too early though. Kyler Murray just went, which is funny because I was gonna consider him here, but. I don't like this Mahomes Murray thing. Like if you draft Mahomes, like you don't need a backup quarterback. But anyway, so I don't feel the need to take a quarterback. There are 5 I like here. So I'm going to wait on that. I'm going to draft a handcuff of yours actually. I hope you weren't going to take him on the way back. Braylon Allen, who I think has looked outstanding. It was little weird seeing him in the second preseason game. He was he actually played behind Isaiah Davis, but I don't know. I mean, he's not behind Isaiah Davis in that chart from what I've seen. And I think that was just the coaches trying to spark a competition or something. I feel like Braylon Allen is definitely RB2, so I guess we'll see. But if Breece Hall goes down, we talked about this with Kyron Williams and Quorum. Like if Breece Hall goes down, Braylon Allen suddenly looks great.
Yeah, I won't mention the specific sites, but Braylon Allen was a guy who in rookie dynasty draft ADP was a first-round pick in like February and March. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm not going to have Braylon Allen in any leagues because this guy's probably not even going to be a day 2 pick. Mm-hmm. And, the funny thing is after he fell, his actual ADP ended up being like late 3rd round. And I loved him at that position in Dynasty because he's only 20 years old. The guy's contract is going to end. He's going to be 24 years old or 23 years old or something like that, going in as an unrestricted free agent. And in redraft, I love him as well. He's been really good throughout camp. He was pretty good in preseason. I agree with you. I think Isaiah Davis might cut into that workload a little bit if Breece Hall goes down, but I think it's going to be mostly Braylon Allen. So I like that pick. Real quick, I took Gabe Davis, who I hate. I call him the bill collector because he shows up once per month. It's a shame that now he's not playing for the Bills anymore. But Christian Kirk hasn't been playing in 2 receiver sets. That happened last year in the preseason as well, but Zay Jones got hurt week 1, so he ended up playing a lot more before he got hurt himself. I think ultimately Brian Thomas is going to end up being the receiver to own there, but maybe early in the year, I'm stuck and I could plug the bill collector in, and it ends up being that 1 out of every 4 games where he has 78 points instead of 0.
Yeah, he's one of those guys in DraftKings who he'll out of nowhere he'll nuke the slate with like 35 points, and then everyone will play him the next week or 2, and then he'll do nothing, and then everyone forgets about him, and then he nukes the slate again. You're right. It's like once per month he does this. It's so annoying. It just feels like you just have to kind of like if you're playing single entry with like not too many people, like 2,000 people, you don't play them. But if you're playing in the millie, with whatever they have 300,000 entries, then you just might as well just play Davis because like once a month you'll be in the running to win just because he goes off. I like your Tank Bigsby pick. Bigsby actually looks pretty good this preseason as opposed to last preseason. He's running with power. I thought like doing well to avoid the tackles. I thought he's looked pretty impressive so far.
And that's exactly my reasoning, along with the fact that ETN was a good fantasy player last year, but he wasn't actually a good running back last year. He was pretty bad in the red zone and at the goal line. He was sort of just kind of like one of these volume guys, which that's what you want, right? Running back in fantasy is all about opportunity and volume, and he got that. But, if Tank Bigsby improves, he could certainly cut into that. And, if ETN gets hurt, it's probably Bigsby's show. So I know I'm up again here, but at this point in the draft, I'm looking for guys who are league winners, or potential league winners, because they're probably going to fall into one of 2 categories here. They're either not going to even be playable, or the starting running back gets hurt and they end up being someone who makes a big difference. And I'm going to stick with that to type this guy's name in because he's 988. But Jordan Mason, reports are that he's beaten out Elijah Mitchell to be the handcuff there. I could see that being, sort of a timeshare if anything happened to McCaffrey. At the same time, I could see the 49ers saying, hey, we have 75 running backs on our preseason roster right now. I know Mitchell's hurt a little bit right now. You wonder if a team like Dallas would give them something for Elijah Mitchell, who's a pretty decent running back. I mean, arguably better than Zeke. So, maybe he ends up being, something happens with Mitchell and Mason's the only guy there and he's the clear handcuff. And I'd take the clear handcuff in that situation.
I also think that Dallas trades for running back. I think their primary running back for this season is probably not on their team right now. I feel like maybe they're biding their time and seeing if someone gets cut or something. But I could see Elijah Mitchell there or Mason or I think Khalil Herbert makes so much sense. Like the Bears have Swift and Roschon Johnson, who both of whom have not played in the past couple of preseason games, and I think that they've been showcasing Herbert a lot in the preseason. I think they're trying to move him. So it makes a lot of sense for Dallas as well. So I do think the Cowboys make some sort of move. So we'll see what happens. I took Tim Patrick in the 12th round. He looks really good, the first time in a while because he's dealt with so many injuries, but he looks back to me. Both he and Javonte Williams look like their former selves. So I don't think it's like crazy. I don't think it's crazy to think that like Patrick is the better receiver on that team compared to Sutton. I know Sutton had 10 touchdowns last year, but he seems to be like Mr. Touchdown regression guy to me. Like I wouldn't touch him for where he's going, but Patrick, I think Patrick could easily be the receiver 1 on the team. I think.
Absolutely. He's the clear starter. They're down on Marvin Mims. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I know they drafted Devon Vele. I'm not sure how you say that guy's last name. The 27-year-old receiver.
Vele, yeah.
But he doesn't look like he's going to factor in much. It looks like it's Sutton and Tim Patrick, and Josh Reynolds is going to play in 3 receiver sets, but we know Josh Reynolds is not someone who you're worried about having more than like 500-600 yards in a season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mims is disappointing. We had this running joke because we used to open up Rainmaker packs. I don't know if you ever got into Rainmakers on DraftKings.
No.
What'd you say?
Oh, no, I'm not familiar with it.
Really? You never heard of it? So it was basically this NFT thing that Rainmakers did. And so if you bought these NFTs and you could enter them into lineups, kind of like pretty much like DraftKings, but you could use these cards every week. So you're basically like building a collection, and also the better cards you had, like the better chance you had of winning. And so I thought it was a really cool idea, and I really got into it. And like you could like either win money or win packs. And so I'd open packs with my co-host Kenny on Wednesday. Each Wednesday we'd open some packs, and I swear, like I got Marvin Mims and like half the packs I opened. It was insane. I had all the Marvin Mims, so it was so frustrating to me. And then I actually sold the best Marvin Mims I had because they it was by tier, and so I sold them. And then there was news that I guess it was like almost a month ago at this point, but Rainmakers, DraftKings discontinued Rainmakers because it went to like litigation or something, because someone lost money on it or something, and the judge ruled that it was these cards that they sold were securities, so they had to they shut it down for some reason. I feel like they could have just gone around it or something. It just changed it, but yeah, they shut down Rainmakers, and like they actually compensated us fairly for it, which is I did not expect, but they did do that, and I guess they had to because they were deemed securities. They could have gotten into a lot of trouble. But no, the point is I had so many Marvin Mims cards, and I was kind of like sweating him out to like do well because like they're hard to sell because like no one wanted them. So I was like, yes, if Marvin Mims does great this year, then suddenly like I'll have a chance to win some contests, but I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, you're off the hook. You don't need to worry at all.
I know. And golf, I don't know if you're in the golf, but I got so many Aaron Battleys too. Like he's we sometimes have Ben Wassley on. He runs a site as well. He's from Australia. So like I mentioned it in passing. He's like, oh, Aaron Badley's from Australia. So he got excited about that. But like Badley's just not a good golfer. So I was like, can I just get more Scotty Schefflers and Sandy Schauffele's? But no, for my picks, I took Jaden Daniels and Jared Goff. Just 1-2 punch here, quarterback. You mentioned Daniels before. It's kind of insane to get him around 13. Feels like he could be a league winner. And then Jared Goff's kind of like the safer bet. So I can play matchups. And if Daniel sucks, I can just go with Goff. So you're up here. Trey Tucker went, who's a nice sleeper there. You're up in the 14th round. So what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm going Tyrone Tracy again. You're just going to see a bunch of handcuff running backs here. I've got 2, 3. I've got 5 receivers. I would only play 3 of them. Got my quarterback and tight end. At this point, I'm really just looking for, especially in the preseason or before the season starts, I want to hold on to these running backs and wait for someone to pull a hamstring in practice and have a potential starter.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. You talk about drafting league winners at the end. I mean, Singletary goes down, suddenly Tracy's might be your RB1. Like that's pretty key. Like Mason, you had the same thing. Bigsby, who looks a lot better this year. At the start of the season, I never would have envisioned like considering Bigsby just because he was so bad last year, but he looks so much better now this preseason training camp. So he's definitely back on the menu. And yeah, Corum. So I like a lot of your late round guys, and so you're about to make another one with your penultimate pick.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a terrible handcuff running back here in Alexander Madison. Nice. But my reasoning is, Dylan Lave's got a lot of hype. Dylan Lave looks completely lost in pass protection. Mm-hmm. Madison's not that good. He's certainly not going to be a league winner. And I don't think Tyrone Tracy's a league winner either. You mentioned drafting running backs in bad offenses. not a great bet. But I look at Tracy and Madison as guys that you might be able to plug in and play. In Tracy's case, like you mentioned, if something happens to Singletary. In Madison's case, Zamir White is the starter, but he's unproven. Who's to say that, Alexander Madison doesn't take over as the lead back at some point, in week 4 or 5. And they're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to play defense and run the ball because they can't let their quarterbacks throw the ball. So, maybe I've got a flex play for bye weeks here in Madison.
They were rotating with White. White was playing into the third quarter, which again, I don't know. I mean, coaches have done some weird things before, so I don't know if I read too much into it, but it could be a timeshare. Like Madison in the past has done well. Brett SC sniped me with Will Shipley. He's going to be my pick here. I love Shipley's look great too. And if Barkley goes down, I don't think it's Gainwell. I think Gainwell is kind of just a third down back. I think Shipley would take over as the starter. But I'm up here. I don't like any of the running backs left, so I'm going to take a receiver who I've been drafting a lot. I don't think anyone's been drafting him besides me, Mr. Greg Dortch. I don't know. Some people might think I'm crazy, but he kind of reminds me of Adam Thielen before Adam Thielen was good. Like Adam Thielen was a guy who was just barely on the roster and he was working hard to get on the roster. And then eventually he made it and then he got some playing time and then he became a starter and then became a Pro Bowler. Like he just worked so hard and he was a slot receiver. And like same thing with Greg Dortch. Like he works so hard. Like his work ethic is just amazing. And he gets better every year. And he plays in the slot. He's a guy who's going to catch passes. I feel like as long as Kyler Murray stays healthy, which is, it's a big if, but if he does, I think Greg Dortch could have like a really good PPR year, just under the radar, like 5, 6, 7 catches most weeks. I think that he's kind of that third player. I know Michael Wilson's there too, but in PPR I like Dortch better. As standard, I like Wilson more, but PPR I like Dortch a little bit. Not like a guy I'm dying to draft. Like I said, I would have taken Shipley here instead, but he's just a late receiver I have my eye on.
And you can plug him in week 1. I was going to, You mentioned Wilson. I was just going to mention him as well. One of those two guys is going to be fantasy relevant this year for sure. Dortch definitely seems like he's going to be a little bit of a target hog. Nothing crazy because you've got Harrison and McBride there, but he should certainly get those like 5, 6 targets a week. 4 catches for 60 yards is 10 points. So I like that pick.
Yeah, I took we usually do some trolley picks at the end. I took Isaiah Bowser as a shout out to my son who's loves Mario Brothers. He's 2.5 years old. He's like obsessed with Mario Brothers ever since he watched the new Mario Brothers movie. And then he got really into it, and I gave him all my old toys that I used to have as a kid. I dug through my closet one night. I found all these old toys I used to play with back from the early 90s. So I gave them all to him. So he's always excited about it. And we bought him this new giant Bowser toy. And so my wife sometimes freezes the toys. And so he has when it's hot outside, he goes outside, tries to break him out of the ice. And he always goes Bowser froze him in the ice. So shout out to my son who's not going to be watching this video anytime soon. But maybe one day he'll be well, man, my dad shouted me out 12 years later.
That's amazing. I love that. That's a great story. And my kids are going to kill me because I didn't know we were doing that. So I didn't have one prepared. But maybe I'll be able to come up with one here in the next 10 seconds.
I love the Walter here. How old are your kids?
My kids are 5, 2, and 8 months. So I haven't slept in 5 years.
I hear that. My son's soon to have my daughter just turned 1 yesterday. So yeah, we're in the same boat with the newborns here. So you're making your final pick here. So
I apologize again to you and my kids for not making a joke pick here. If I had another minute or two, I could probably come up with one. But I think I'm going to go. It's unclear whether or not we're drafting defenses here, so I'll just go Raiders defense only because I think that's a unit that's going to outperform what they've been for the last 30 years, which has been a terrible defense, really, which is amazing. All the different coaching staffs they've had, all the different regimes, they've been terrible. They've been a terrible defense for 30 years.
But, I think top 10 is within, the realm of possibility for this year. So there's Raiders defense.
I think so for sure. I mean, they were 7th in EPA last year, and then they added Christian Wilkins. So I definitely think that that's a good defensive pick. Deuce Vaughn, a guy I like late, kind of missed him. I think he should be in my rankings. He looked actually pretty good. Now I know he's the 3rd running back on the team, but I think if he gets some opportunities, then he could probably do well. We had some comments here, and then we could talk about our teams. Adib says, "Can you help me on my fantasy team? Trying to beat my friends and not do the punishment." I'm kind of curious what the punishment is, but yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, we can do that. Let's see. Who wants a brittle Elijah Moore? Is Zeke more durable? I don't know who's drafting Elijah Moore.
Cedric Tillman's wide receiver 3 there. He's playing on the outside now. Jerry Jeudy in the slot. Elijah Moore's out of the rotation.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Sue says, where does the Bills have set up a MASH unit adjacent to their practice facility? Man, they lost Samuel today. Matt Milano went down. Like, he's out until December. This is just brutal. Johnson's Bills are so cooked this year. I feel like just going 0-17 to get the top pick. Well, you don't need the top pick. You have Josh Allen. I guess you could trade it, right? But if you have the 3rd pick, you get one of the edge rushers coming out. There's a lot of good edge rushers next year. Chase Claypool's still healthy. Yeah, he's like the last.
He's injured too.
Yeah. And so he's not on the team anymore. And John says, being the idiot traded Diggs. John not too happy about that. Locked on Law says, what the F does that have to do with price of draft picks in a PPR league? I don't know what that means. But he says, your spring chickens, my youngest turned 18 last week. Wow. Well, happy birthday to him. That's it's not going to be for a while for both of us. But yeah, it is a lot of fun. But like you, I have not slept. I think I slept like 5 hours the other night. I was like, wow, this is a lot.
Every minute though, right?
Yeah, right. John says, if I was Josh Allen, I'd ask for a trade. Yeah. Joey says, what's up, Walter? Was at work late, did the first 8 to 10 picks on my phone. Okay, makes sense. So I'll definitely factor that in. All right, so do you want to talk about your team? And then, well, I'll mention mine first. So I went A.J. Brown. I kind of rotated running backs to receivers early. Brown, Debo, Keenan Allen are my receivers. We'll see. I mean, Keenan Allen, maybe he's out of shape or something, but I have to look more into that. But I still have faith in him. And then, Marquise Brown, Jacoby Myers, Tim Patrick. I like my receiving depth. Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, and Tajay Spears-Hubbard. I feel like I have a good group of running backs. McBride could be a great tight end, and then the quarterbacks I like to rotate here. I like how this team turned out. That's generally been the case with drafting late in the first round. So do you want to talk about your team?
Yeah, so my plan was to go hero running back, which is, you take a running back first. I would, figured I had a good chance of getting one of those top 3, McCaffrey, Hall, or Robinson, and then building my team around wide receivers and tight ends. And after the run on running backs in the 2nd round, I had a couple guys go there that I'm used to seeing go in the 3rd round. I took James Cook because I had him a little bit higher than a couple of the guys who had already been picked. Again, I think he's a guy with, I mentioned Josh Allen's going to have his touchdown rushes. It's not like he's going to, that's going to go away. But he had 15 last year. And, if a couple of those or 3 or 4 of those go to James Cook, now all of a sudden he's got a chance to be a top 6 or 7 overall running back. So that's why I took him there. Obviously, I need Cooper Kupp to go back to being a top 5 or 6 wide receiver. He's 31 now, but he's also healthy, so that's certainly within the range of possibilities. I think McLaurin's in for a big year. Recency bias is why I think he's falling as far as he does. He's a pretty safe bet in my mind to be somewhere between wide receiver 20 and 30. Adunze, again, I look at as a guy where, I always feel like I have enough confidence in myself to get through, to survive the first half of the season, and get through to the end of the season and have some of these guys really make a difference or be league winners. A lot of times you see these rookie wide receivers will have 800 yards receiving or something like that, modest numbers for the season, but a good
portion of that comes during the second part of the year, which really makes them, very viable fantasy contributors during that time. And then Smith-Njigba, again, new offensive coordinator. Lockett should regress. I'm expecting a year or two jump from him. Dak, I have rated very highly. Got him as my QB4 because they're going to run a lot of plays and they're not going to be able to run the ball a lot. So there should be a lot of passing volume like you saw toward the end of last year with him. I think he finished QB3 overall last year. The tight ends, obviously, I have a positional advantage there. And then, other than the bill collector was kind of took Gabe Davis. He's going to play, and they don't really have a wide receiver one, although I think that'll be Brian Thomas down the stretch this year. But the rest of these picks are all just basically, taking a shot at, running back getting hurt, because running backs get hurt and running back production is based largely in fantasy is based largely on volume. So Blake Corum, a potential league winner. If Kyron Williams gets hurt, he's going to win people leagues. Tank Bigsby, well, if the preseason and training camp hype, spills over, he could cut into ETN's workload even without an injury. And then Mason's, been really good as well. Tracy and Madison, their ceiling isn't as high as those others, but again, they're an injury, or in Madison's case, maybe even just a couple unproductive weeks of Zamir White away from having a role and being flex worthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the late picks you made there with the upside for sure. Do you have time to talk about these other teams, or I don't know if I should?
Of course.
Okay, cool. So Funky Dan, you mentioned hero running back strategy. That's what he did here with McCaffrey, and then he took a bunch of receivers: Olave, Waddle, Smith, Neighbors, Godwin, and then Richardson, and then his other running backs: Ford, Brooks, Gibson, McLaughlin, Chandler, Lobby. I like that he focused on running backs late. Like sometimes you see guys, and we'll talk about another team that doesn't draft running back early, and then they don't draft running back late. It's kind of like they forget. So at least he took a shot on some of these guys. I don't know if I don't love Gibson. I don't love McLaughlin. Chandler, I think, has some potential. Lobby, you mentioned him. He's around 16 guys, whatever. I like that he took this tight end. So this is another example. Like you can wait on tight end with Freiermuth in round 15. I guess like I don't know if you need to draft Fields. Like I don't think Fields has been drafted in our mocks. But if you love him, if you think that he's the guy in Pittsburgh, then sure. But I don't. Some of these picks I'm not a fan of. Like I don't know, like Godwin taking your fifth receiver before your second running back. Like I would have felt much better about this team if you took like Javonte Williams or Raheem Mostert here, or Tajay Spears, or like instead of Godwin or Neighbors. I think just being a little bit more balanced, but otherwise I think it's an okay strategy. I just kind of worry about this. Like Brooks is not going to play for a while. So it's running backs are being McCaffrey Ford for a while. And then I guess the plan is like when Brooks comes back and Chubb is going to come back at the same time, hypothetically, and then, you could swap Brooks and Ford. I guess it makes sense. So he had a strategy here. So, I think this could work. I'm not a huge fan of the team, but I could see it. I could see it panning out. What do you think?
Yeah, I love the value on Devontae Smith and Malik Neighbors. Those are, a couple of great picks. That's the end of the fourth round, the beginning of the fifth round on those guys. I think Devontae Smith is worthy of being picked in the second round. I know that's higher than most have him. But I love that pick. You mentioned drafting 5 receivers before, a second running back. I don't mind that, but I think, instead of Godwin here, if you go with, I think what happened was he was probably banking on McBride, Pitts, or Kittle getting back to him, and then it didn't happen. I like that draft a lot more if that happens. Freiermuth, we're going to have to see. I know Arthur Smith loves tight ends, but, he loves to have like 4 tight ends that he uses, and he's got his buddy Michael Pruitt over there in Pittsburgh. So, I don't know. We'll see how that one works out. That's either going to look like a great pick, or, he's going to be, if this were a real league, he'd be frustrated that Darnell Washington has 3 targets and Michael Pruitt has 2 targets and Freiermuth has 3 targets on a weekly basis. You're right about Fields. You don't really have to draft him, but I like what Funky Dan did overall, like that wide receiver depth from rounds 2 through 4 or 2 through 5, that is. And I could definitely see, you're right about his plan. He's going to take Ford for the beginning of the year. And then if Jonathan Brooks is playing at the end of the year, he could produce at a running back 1, maybe like that running back 10 through 12 clip on a points per game basis late in the season. And that would help his team a lot.
Yeah. Team 2, Nick Veazey. So this is what I was referring to, like not drafting running back early and then not drafting running back late for some reason. Like Derrick Henry, I don't like, talked about him before. Najee Harris, fine. And then there's only 2 running backs in the first 9 rounds, but then he only took 2 more. Ezekiel Elliott, who is washed up, and then Kendrick Miller, who's injured. So it's like, what's the plan here at running back? I just don't get it. Like, why not draft a running back instead of Purdy? Why not draft a running back instead of Bowers? You don't need 2 tight ends. Yeah, you can have 2 tight ends, but like when you only have 4 running backs, you should probably take another running back. Lamar Jackson, I don't like early just because he tends to get injured a lot. Plus, he lost 3 starting offensive linemen, and plus he did the whole Jackson plus Henry stack. Like this doesn't work. If Henry were a pass catcher, sure, but he's not. So yeah, there's a lot wrong with this team. Also, another clash here with Harris and Pickens. Just way too many conflicts here for me. I don't like this team at all. What do you think?
Yeah, again, I mentioned the second round is a little bit high for rookies for me. Bijan Robinson was a guy faded in the first round really regularly last year, and that hurt a lot of people in the first round. I feel like the first couple rounds are not places for sleepers. That just get sure production out of those rounds. So that's a little bit early for me. Derrick Henry, I just don't like running backs in PPR that don't catch passes. In Nick Veazey's defense, though, you look what they did with Gus Edwards last year. Every time they had the ball inside the 5-yard line, Gus Edwards got the ball. I'm sure Henry will too, but he had 12 touchdowns last year and was only the running back 18 overall in points per game in fantasy. He's got 1,500 carries in the last 5 years, which is an awful lot. That's going to catch up with him at some point. So I don't love him there. Metcalf is a good pick. Harris could look like a good pick with Warren out. Pickens, again, I don't trust Arthur Smith, although the value there isn't bad. I'm not. You mentioned Kendrick Miller. I don't know what's going on with him. He's injured. I'm sure he'll make the team, but Dennis Allen doesn't sound very happy with him. I'm going to focus on a positive here, though. Jalen McMillan, he's got a chance to be, he's got a chance to be relevant. It's going to be tough, but I don't think Baker Mayfield can support 3 fantasy relevant wide receivers. But it looks like McMillan might win the starting job on the outside. So yeah, I like him as a prospect. I like that pick.
Yeah. If Evans goes down, suddenly it's going to look a lot better. Drew 3, team 3. I like most of these picks. The receiving core looks good, a little thin early. He took a lot of late rounders because he only took 4 in the first 12 rounds. He had Lamb, which is a superstar. Collins, he said he liked a lot. Higgins, he said he liked a lot. So, and Josh Palmer, he could be the number 1 receiver on the Chargers. He's not playing in the preseason, unlike Ladd McConkey, so that's something. And then he took some rookies late, plus Tolbert, which is it's fine. His running backs, I'm not a big fan of HM, but again, I don't like much here anyway. James Conner, I think, is underrated, and then Javonte Williams, he looks like he's back, like I've said before. Trey Benson, so I don't like handcuffing your own players. I feel like you're just curbing your upside. Yeah, it's a hedge, but if I always say this, like if Connor gets hurt, then you lose your 4th rounder. If Connor doesn't get hurt, then you wasted your 9th rounder. I like taking other players' handcuffs instead. But I do like the Ray Davis pick. I think there's a lot of potential there. You talk about league winners. I think that could be one. Bucky Irving as well. I think to a slightly lesser extent, but I like him too. Deuce Vaughn, I said, great late round pick. I like the Burrow value here. Also, Kittle value, not bad if Aiyuk is traded. But yeah, Burrow in the 8th round, he was on my radar for sure if he made it back to round 9. And I like that he paired Burrow with Higgins. He's got a nice stack there. So what do you think about Drew 3?
Yeah, I love these wide receivers. Great value on them. CeeDee Lamb goes 101 in a lot of leagues that I've seen. Nico Collins, I've got Nico Collins at the end of the 1st round. I know this is where he goes, but I love that pick. I mentioned that earlier. T. Higgins, I talked about, potentially being worth a late 2nd round pick. He got him, I would have much rather had T. Higgins than Terry McLaurin, so he certainly sniped me there. Kittle, again, great value on Kittle. He's, he had 1,000 yards receiving last year. He's got a potential to be one of these guys that makes a difference. I'll defend him on the Benson handcuff only because A-Chain and Connor are both constantly injured. And, he might have looked at this as a situation where, you want to make sure that you have two running backs that you could literally play, each week. So, okay, he's got the Cardinals running back, regardless of whether or not Connor gets hurt. And then hopefully A-Chain stays healthy. He's got Javonte Williams there if not. I like you mentioned Davis and Irving. Love that. Vaughn, I like that as well. You mentioned he's the third running back there, but they don't, he's clearly right now behind Zeke and Dowdle, but it wouldn't surprise me if that changed, in 3 weeks. So I love what he did. The one area where I'm going to nitpick is, with those receivers, those first 4 receivers that he has, and the fact that we're only playing 2 in a flex, you don't need Leggett, Polk, and Tolbert. Tolbert, you don't handcuff wide receivers because unlike running backs, wide receiver talent, with wide receivers talent is what makes the player's fantasy relevant, right? CeeDee Lamb's not there. He's going to be back. But if he holds out into the season for some reason, you're not going to all of a sudden see one of these receivers get 10 targets like CeeDee Lamb would. They'd get spread out, amongst 3 or 4 different receivers. So he would just be getting dropped if this were a real league. And with Leggett and Polk, they have a chance to be relevant later in the year. But guess what? Those are the type of guys who end up on waivers after week 1 because they're not going to have a role right away. Right. So love what he did, but I have to nitpick him because he sniped me a whole bunch.
All right. So Team 5, D-Wolf 88. I mentioned a lot of the picks he made, which are pretty good. Bijan, obviously, at the top. Stephon Diggs in the 3rd round. He could be back this year. Jalen Hurts at 408. I think that's great value. I would have taken him at 403. If this were standard, I think I would have taken Hurts at 403. So, Steve, I'm not a big Stevenson guy just because, a running back on bad team. The Patriots could be the worst team in the NFL. I don't know what to make an Eckler either. Like, he was at the top of my board when D-Wolf took him there. I'm kind of confused about what to do with him. But I love Watson. I think he's going to have a great year because he kind of sought after why he was getting injured so much, and he found that one hamstring was larger than the other. So maybe he's fixed it. Pearsall, I love him around 9. Dowdle around 10 has a lot of potential. Dallas Goedert, great value with him in round 11. Dallas is hurt, but he's going to be back. And then Mike Williams, just taking the flyer there. Trey Tucker, again, look good. I don't know. You don't need Chiggy Bang Bang and Okonkwo here in round 16. I think probably I would rather have a sleeper there. And, you have Goddard. So, when are you going to play Okonkwo over him? But I'm just kind of nitpicking 16th rounders here. So what do you think about D-Wolf's team?
Yeah, I love Downs and Mike Williams that late. I was pretty set on just going handcuff running backs at that point, but Josh Downs has a chance to be one of these guys where once he gets healthy, he's very playable. He had a pretty good rookie year. And the only thing that worries with me is just going to be volume this year with Anthony Richardson. I think they might actually have thrown more passes last year with Minshew and without Taylor for part of the year than they will this year. But Downs is a player who I really like. I think he's got a chance to break out. And then Mike Williams, as long as he's healthy, he's very consistently a top 24 wide receiver, and here he is going very late in the draft. Stevenson, I hear what you're saying about Stevenson. It makes perfect sense. But I actually don't mind him just because of the volume that he should receive there. Antonio Gibson fumbles quite a bit. So, I think that's going to, and Kevin Harris is the only guy behind him. So I think Stevenson could at least get the volume to be sort of like a running back 14 to 24 type player. So I don't mind that as your running back too. I don't think he's got a lot of upside to vault into those, be like a true difference maker, like a running back 1, the top 12, obviously. And then Eckler, I don't really like. I got to say, you know, you look at the quarterbacks who are very athletic, and they tend to not check down a lot. And you know, they just instead of checking down to the running back, they just run. So I don't love Eckler, but I'm with you on Watson too. He's, you know, at the top of the show, we sort of mentioned that there are some receivers from last year that just didn't work out, but a lot of that was due to injury. Watson was a lot more expensive last year. He was going in the 4th and 5th round. This year, you know, you get a little bit of a bargain. You mentioned he's potentially healthy. He did some research with the size of his hamstrings. And you know, that's honestly a league winning potential pick in the 7th round. So I like that.
Yeah, wait some comments here. Second. Let's see. This John says James Cook isn't your goal line back. Ray Davis will be. Yeah. Joey says I love James Cook. They're going to run the ball more. So yeah, I like Cook more in PPR. And John says they're going to have to do the wishbone with all your receiver injuries. It's true. Let's see here. Walter Snakeby and McBride. Sorry about that, Joey. Matt says I waited too long to take a tight end in my 12-team league. Ended up with Kmet. Someone in my league took Pitts and Bowers. Would I be dumb to try to trade for Bowers already? 2-team flex league. I like Kmet. I don't think Kmet and Bowers, like Bowers long term, sure. But this year, like Kmet Bowers, I don't think there's that much of a difference between them. So yeah, he's asking, like, would you trade for a tight end if you only had Kmet? Like, what would you do?
You know, so I think I would trade for a tight end. I like Kmet as a player. I worry about what they're going to do. Shane Waldron, you know, has a history of playing multiple tight ends. They've got Gerald Everett there now as well. But I don't know if Bowers is the right target, only because you've got Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell at some point, I'm sure. They're not going to be able to support all these receivers and tight ends who, you know, on the surface, they look like they have the talent to be fantasy relevant. But in reality, you got a slow-paced offense. They're going to run the ball a lot. You've got terrible quarterback play. And underrated factor is their defense has a chance to be good, which is, you know, might keep them in some games. It might be some low-scoring, slow games. And I could see a guy like Bowers being okay, but not really worth his ADP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. All right, so Team 6, Brett SC. He did something I don't like in a redraft format. He took a quarterback and a tight end early. I think you have to kind of choose one because running back or receiver are a lot thinner than those positions. So what usually happens is teams that do this, they tend to be very thin at one position. It looks like running back for him. Rashad White's is RB1, which is not great. And then you have Mostert tends to get banged up a lot. I do like this value here around 6, but Devin Singletary, a running back on bad team. And then he has Algiers, you know, it's a fine handcuff, but still, I do love Shipley here. I got to shout out Walter, nice pick. Justice Hill just does nothing. So I'm concerned about this running back core, but you have to wonder, like, does everything else make up for it? So he has, Chase, obviously great. But then Drake London, I like, but I don't love Drake London. I think he should be going into the 3rd round. I think I know Cousins could be an upgrade, but Cousins is a 36-year-old coming off a torn Achilles. Like I don't think it's necessarily going to be like an instant upgrade. Obviously, he's going to be better than Desmond Ridder, but I don't think he may not be what he was last year because he's old and he's coming out to injuries. So it's just a big question mark, I think. And then Mike Evans is 31, and you also have this White and Evans clash here. So that's an issue. And then Sutton, not a fan. Shakir, I think, has potential. Dotson, I like Dotson a little bit. Judy, I think, is a wasted pick. I don't like this team overall. Again, I don't like going quarterback and tight end early. I think you have to choose one. What do you think about this team?
Well, I love early round tight end. So I like Mark Andrews there in the 5th round. I thought that was a good pick. There's no real running back one on this team. Because White and Mostert are going to show regression, based off of, they're not going to repeat what they did last year. It's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. However, I think that he might have 3 very playable running backs. Singletary got like 10 carries the other day. I don't know what the Giants are even doing, giving their starting running back 10 carries in the preseason. But, I don't think he's going to he's going to have playable running backs, but usually when you look back at the end of the year at the teams that win these leagues, you're going to need somebody who kind of came out of nowhere and finished as like a top 6 running back, right? Those are the guys that make the biggest difference. And so I think for this particular team, honestly, he'd need a Bijan injury, and he'd need Tyler Algier to take over, and he'd need Kirk Cousins to be, that sort of reliable quarterback that he's been before the Achilles. So, if Algier takes over, he's the workhorse, because obviously that's only happening if Bijan Robinson gets hurt. Then I think this team's got a chance to win. Otherwise, I think the running backs are just a little bit too mediocre. They're not bad. They're just mediocre.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move on to Team 7 Trump Best. It's Team 7. I like the team a lot. There's one minor thing. You have a conflict here with Pacheco and Rice, but Rice is your 4th receiver, so he's not technically a starter for you. So I think that's fine. And you think that's great value. So it's a good pick, because if he weren't suspended, he'd be going, or if you weren't going to be suspended, he'd be going a lot earlier. But I love this team. Jefferson, great. Pacheco, I think, is underrated. He's going to handle a lot more of the third down work with Jared McKinnon gone. Joe Mixon, I was hoping he'd fall to me at 310. DJ Moore, Caleb Williams looks outstanding, so Moore could play great. Dell, 5th round, I think is great value compared to the other Houston receivers. Rashee Rice, talked about him. Jalen Warren's the only question mark here because he's injured, but it's not like a long-term thing. Chase Brown could be the starting running back there. Jordan Love, great value. I was going to take him at 9-10 if he fell to me. Charbonnet, not too crazy about this, but I could understand why he did it. Wicks, potential. Wright is potential. Kamani Vidal has a lot of potential too. Yoshivas, even a decent pick. And, he took his tight end in round 15, which I fully support given the depth here. So I love this team overall. I thought Trump Best did a great job. What do you think?
Yeah, so I love the wide receivers. In the high stakes leagues, you're starting to see Rashee Rice actually go at the end of the 2nd round as people get a little bit more confidence he's not going to be suspended. It's too early for me, but certainly here, in the 6th round, middle of the 6th round, that's terrific value. I also love the value with his other early round wide receivers here. I'm not a fan of Pacheco and Mixon in those spots. Pacheco was like a running back 15 overall last year. I think a lot of people are thinking that he's just going to gain even more of the workload this year. And I just don't think that that's going to be the case. The Chiefs get the ball inside the 5-yard line, and whenever, whereas the Dolphins might just hand it off to Mostert, or the Ravens might just hand it off to Derrick Henry, the Chiefs will run some play where, Patrick Mahomes throws it behind his back to, you've seen it. It's some kind of weird trick play. And that could cost him touchdown potential. So I think his ceiling is really like that running back 15 from last year. He went earlier than that here. Mixon, I think Mixon is toast, but that pick could work out. I don't love Mixon. It could work out only because they don't have anyone else there. Dameon Pierce, you heard he was having a good camp. He averages like 1 yard a carry, though. He's been pretty bad. It's not a good system fit there, clearly. And Cam Akers is done. And then, I guess to be a little bit different here, Musgrave, I love the player, but I think it's tough in a league like this. The Packers have a lot of targets. They've got 2 tight ends. Could he break out and be, a top 6 or 7 tight end? I guess it's possible, but I think more than likely he's going to be a guy who has a few good weeks and then also has a whole bunch of weeks where he has like 2 catches for 15 yards. And then one last thing, this is like a nuanced thing. I'm really nitpicking here, but you don't need to draft DeMarcus Robinson and Andre Iosivas. I know they could have some value throughout the year, but it's the preseason right now. You've got 2 weeks before the season starts. You don't want to be holding these guys on your rosters because even if something happens to the starters there, these guys don't really gain value. You want to be holding, a running back in those spots where, if something happens to the starter, they could all of a sudden jump up like 6 or 7 rounds and ADP.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I missed this. Mixon and Dell is also a conflict, so I want to try to avoid that. Team 8, Joey Russo. He started with double receiver. One of only 3 teams to do that. Brown, St. Brown, and Nakua. So if Nakua's healthy, that looks great. Then he took Kamara and Walker. I really have concern about Kamara with the Saints offense, but that bad offensive line could actually help him in PPR, just because you mentioned how he caught a ton of passes last year, and I think that could happen again. Walker is gonna. I did not like Walker a couple months ago, but they signed Connor Williams, so he's really going to benefit from that. So I like him a lot more now. So I think it's good value at 405. Worthy's kind of sticker shock here, but he could outplay this ADP for sure. Not crazy about Pitts. I do recognize the potential though. Samir White. I think that's a fine pick, the 7th round. He's technically the starter, but I guess we don't know. Brian Thomas, I'm on board with you with this one. I love Brian Thomas. Tua around 9, great value. Love that Joey waited until round 9 to get Tua. I was going to take him or Jordan Love at 9-10, but they both sniped me. Not crazy about Dubs, but I get it. Foreman is a guy. If Chubb doesn't get back at all this year, Foreman could be the starting running back on that team by the end of the year. And we've seen him do well, so I like that. Locke, I think this is kind of like a wasted pick. I think he's a little too old. And Pierce too. Pierce does nothing. Even if he gets a chance, it feels like he's not going to do much. Zay Jones, is the 4th receiver in Arizona. It feels like you can do better there. Estime, I think that I was going to consider him at 15-10, just because he has a chance to be a starter, but we'll see. And then Jermaine Burton has done well in the preseason, so it's a fine late round flyer. So I like to see him brawl. A couple of things I would have done differently, but what do you think here?
Yeah, I love the first 10 rounds. Again, starts with 2 proven players. Great job with those 2 receivers. Kamara, he's toast, but it doesn't matter because Derek Carr is the quarterback there, and this is a PPR league. So he's going to have, he's going to average below 4 yards a carry again, and he's going to have 8 targets a game and score a lot of points in this format, even though he's kind of not a good football player. Well, not as good of a football player as he used to be at this point. I love Kenneth Walker in the 4th round. I think that's really good value. It sounds like he could be a 3-down workhorse here. And if he is, I'll be honest, I like him better than Pacheco, who went in the 2nd round, as long as that holds true. Worthy, again, maybe a half round earlier than I would have considered him. But I love what Joey Russo 31 did here. Taking shots in the 5th round. If you aren't going to lose your league if you mess up in the 5th round, but you could potentially win it. If you get someone who outperforms their ADP, I could see that happening with Worthy. Same with Pitts. That's the same type of pick. He had 1,000 yards as a rookie with Matt Ryan. A lot of people are looking and seeing Kirk Cousins and saying, well, similar type quarterback could have another 1,000 yards. White, he's a starter, whatever. That's your running back 3. That's fine. Brian Thomas, again, high potential. Tua goes back to what you were saying. By the way, I love what you did quarterback with taking those 2 QB1s, and you'd be basically playing the matchup there. But Tua, he waited. He got a good quarterback who's got the potential to be top 12. And Dobbs, I don't like him as much as I like Watson, but all the talk is that he's like wide receiver 1 there. I don't know if wide receiver 1 there is going to matter. But in the 10th round, again, it's worth it to just take that shot. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. It's the area to take shots to try to win the league. I love what Joey Russo 31 did. Don't love the end of his draft, but whatever, it doesn't matter. He did a great job here.
Yeah, I think it's a good team. So JD Scribner, team 9. I think Garrett Wilson at that spot a little too early. I liked a lot of the other players more, but I get it. If Rodgers stays healthy, it's gonna be great. He did something again with the tight end and quarterback early, so at least he paired Mahomes with Kelsey, which makes sense. But I think you're going to see a decline with Kelsey this year. Just well, first of all, he's 34, and second, he seemed distracted last year with Taylor Swift, and we'll see if that happens again. But now the team has Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy, so he's going to lose some targets there. So I think 3rd rounds, I think it's too early for Kelsey. So I would have gone with like a Kenneth Walker instead, or Debo or Michael Pittman instead. But, Mahomes in the 4th, I think, is good value. I worry about these running back. Well, at least Swift. I worry about Swift and Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is so pedestrian, and then Swift gets injured a lot. I think Montgomery could be fine, but this is PPR, so it's like not ideal for him. Second receiver is Calvin Ridley, which I think is a little problematic. And then his 4th receiver is Jameson Williams, just never produces. And I know he has potential, but man, he just never lives up to it. I don't know, like taking Kyler Murray in round 11 when you already have Mahomes, like you're never going to play Murray. So don't do that. I love Roschon Johnson just because like he's not playing in the preseason. So I assume that means that they have big plans for him. And again, like Dalton Schultz, like you have Kelsey. Like if you're going to wait if you can get Schultz in the round 13, just don't take Kelsey in round 3, I think. Or take Kelsey and don't take Dalton Schultz. Like try to load up on running backs or sleeper receivers here. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this team. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you on this. AJ Brown is sitting there at 109, and for me, that's a value. Garrett Wilson's kind of tough to take over him. I am probably overthinking this a little bit with Devontae Adams, but if he ends up as a Jet at some point this year, that's going to really hurt Garrett Wilson's fantasy production. And I mentioned all the reasons why I like AJ Brown better than Garrett Wilson earlier. ETN is a guy who, again, had the volume, and that's what you need, but he wasn't that good as an actual player. So is he going to have that same volume again this year? Is he going to start to lose goal line carries? We'll see. Kelsey, how long is he going to keep this going? He's started to show regression already. An off season could make a world of difference. This isn't baseball, right? Guys don't always just slowly decline. Sometimes they fall off a cliff, and certainly with all those other targets there, Brown and Worthy and Rice being a year older, that could cut into his production. The running backs are really just mediocre. You could play Swift, you could play Montgomery. I don't know how much upside they have. Gus Edwards, same thing. Jim Harbaugh's probably going to run the ball 1,000 times a game, and J.K. Dobbins, you really can't trust J.K. Dobbins to do anything coming off of a torn Achilles. But he's not going to catch any passes. You're just going to it's like 1993 fantasy football with him. You're going to have to hope he scores a touchdown. And you mentioned it with Jameson Williams. I like Jameson Williams a little bit as a player, but that's a lot of targets in Detroit. You've got St. Brown's going to get his 150, 160 targets. Laporta's going to get his targets. And you got to figure Jahmyr Gibbs is going to, have 85, 95 targets. So what's left for Jameson Williams? Is he going to have, are there 100 targets left for him to break out? I don't know about that. You mentioned Murray. You're right. Fantasy football is a weekly game. You like to play matchups, but not if you got Patrick Mahomes. You're never going to take him out of the lineup. And then there's no need to draft, some of these guys later. Ben Sinnott is going to get dropped, if this were a real league. You don't need Dalton Schultz. He's not really a difference maker. I don't like the team that much.
Okay. All right. We have 2 more left. Slew. I like the team a lot. So he started with 2 stud running backs in Barkley and Williams. And then nice depth here with Pollard and Brian Robinson. I don't know what to think about Dobbins because he's gonna have the potential to do well, but he's coming off the torn Achilles, which has been kind of like a death sentence for most running backs. Khalil Herbert, if he's traded, maybe he goes somewhere and is productive. We'll see. The receivers here look good. Pittman with Ayuk. You don't know where Ayuk's going to go, but still, like Christian Kirk, Jaden Reed. Good PPR receivers. Shaheed, I'm worried about the Saints offense, but and then you have Caleb Williams, who has a lot of potential. So it makes sense that he would pair him with another quarterback with Lawrence, and David Njoku. I thought was good value in round 9. So what do you think about Slew's team?
Yeah, I'm actually not too big of a fan of this team. I feel like Barkley always goes in the first round of fantasy drafts and never lives up to that hype. He's been really pretty similar to Josh Jacobs. Jacobs has outproduced him most years of their career. You got Jacobs half a round later. And I don't love the running back start, although I do like Kyron Williams a lot in the second round. because here when you look at these wide receivers, you've got Pittman. He's due for some regression, right? They're not going to run the ball, they're not going to throw the ball as much. And you've got Josh Downs looks to have taken a step forward. You've got A.D. Mitchell there now. Ayuk, we don't know what's going on with him. I don't hate him in the beginning of the 4th round, but I personally am taking DJ Moore, Devontae Smith, Malik Neighbors, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins over him, at least. I might take McLaurin over him as well, to be honest. If he ends up back in San Francisco, well, he hasn't been practicing. You know, these guys who sit out all of camp and come back, you worry about injuries with them. And again, same thing we were talking about the Lions. You know, Ayuk had a very, very efficient season last year, but if everybody stays healthy in that offense, you've got 95 targets for McCaffrey, you've got Debo's targets, you've got Kittle's targets. Somebody's going to suffer most likely in terms of fantasy production. And then Kirk and Jaden Reed are not playing in 2 receiver sets in the preseason, which worries me a little bit. And Rashid Shaheed's a good player when he's healthy, which is not very often. I'll end on a positive here. He drafted Chris Warren. That's interesting. Nice. I remember him from Texas. Yes. But anyway, Darnell Mooney, really sort of boring pick here, but I could see him actually sort of having value. If Kirk Cousins goes back to being what he was, Darnell Mooney's the pretty clear second receiver there. You know, I don't think I'm not projecting anything spectacular for him, but I could see him being like wide receiver 40, which would represent pretty good value where he took him.
We had a comment here. Hold on. A couple comments. Hold on. Said John Dotson may not start. Dan Quinn isn't pleased with his lack of effort. Yeah, it seems I like Dotson a lot more earlier in the summer, but it seems like just may not live up to it. Joey defending the Saints running game. Our running game is going to be better than with Clint Kubiak not running the ball at the middle every play. Kamara will eat this year. And then Clint Kubiak is going to run more of an outside zone run game and not run up the middle. The Saints run game would be significantly better. I worry about the blocking personally. Like that offensive line looks dreadful to me. Do you think the same thing?
Absolutely. And I mean, Kamara is getting up there in age too. He's not the same player that he was a few years ago. I mean, he's been under 4 yards a carry for a while now.
Yeah. John's saying, would you rather have Brown/Barkley or Barkley/Gibbs? I picked 10th and 11th in 10-team PPR league. Well, Brown is that St. Brown Barkley? I assume because AJ Brown Barkley would be, that's a conflict there. So I assume St. Brown Barkley or Barkley Gibbs.
I'm taking AJ Brown and anybody.
Yeah. I mean, if it's AJ Brown, maybe it's AJ Brown Gibbs. Because like Brown and Barkley, that's tough. Like to have 2 Eagles there. So yeah, I mean, if this is DraftKings, you're trying to get like the upside. I guess I don't know. AJ Brown.
Take AJ Brown. Yeah, take AJ Brown at 10, and then worry about the second round when you get there.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, go AJ Brown Gibbs or something, or AJ Brown Kyron Williams, or AJ Brown Jacobs. So yeah, that's what I'll do. And then Cassandra says, while I listened to this while doing cardio, had to stop and remove my shoe because my foot was killing me. Realized it was because my sock was inside out, now limping. So after a stupid backwards sock idea. Okay, well, first of all, I've revealed this trick, this life hack, and a lot of people don't do this. Try wearing your socks inside out. It will change your life. You'll be like, oh my God, it feels like my feet are in clouds or something, because American socks are made wrong because the seams are on the inside. So if you wear your socks inside out, you don't have to worry about the seams, and so much more comfortable. So I guarantee, Mike, if you do this, like you'll be like, oh my God, Walt, this is amazing.
I'm trying this tomorrow.
Yeah, try it. I guarantee you'll love it. However, the caveat here is that like, don't do it if you're working out. Like, that's probably a bad idea. So you could don't F this stupid backward sock idea. Just don't do it when you work out. Like wear normal socks when you work out, but then if you're just relaxing, wear socks inside out. So that's my defense of that, Cassandra.
I can't wait to try this.
I'm curious to hear if you love this, because everyone I told this to who has listened to me, they're like, "Oh my God, Walt, this is amazing!" Like no one goes back on it. They all wear their socks inside out. So
now, one more question on this. I know this is
yeah.
about fantasy football, but this question I feel like is more important.
Yeah.
Why am I not doing this? Like, if I'm going for a run tomorrow, why am I not wearing my socks inside out for the run?
I think, I don't know. It's just I mean, Cassandra here kind of showed it. I like it just might like, I don't know why. It just would mess up your feet or something. I don't know. I'm not a podiatrist or anything, but I think this maybe the socks are made to do like athletic activity, I suppose. And so maybe the seams being on the inside help in that regard. Because if you don't have the seam, I don't know, maybe it just messes up your foot. But so yeah, like if you're just relaxing, just try it inside out. But if you are working out, just do it regularly. So
I'm looking forward to trying this. I will report back.
So yes, is this better for skinny feet or fat feet? I don't know. I don't even know what mine qualify as. I don't have flat feet. It's definitely curved. So, but like the point is, it's way more comfortable for sure. I guarantee you will not go back on this. Anyone listening to this, you try wearing your socks inside out. As long as you're not working out, you'll not regret it. Vlange asking, rate 10 man full PPR: Allen, Gibbs, Zamir, Chase, Adams, Laporta, Swift, Jack Smith, and Jigba. I feel like in a 10-team PPR, you have to have a better RB2 than Zamir White. But I guess Swift could be that. Outside of that, I think that's fine. You have Zamir and Adams conflict. Well, Adams could be traded. And then you have Gibbs Laporta conflict. So you drafted too many players from the same team. Like, I just want to try to avoid that unless it's like QB plus receiver, QB plus tight end. So that's like the main concern I have with this team. But I mean, you have good players otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I clearly don't mind picking the players from the same team as much. I drafted like every Buffalo Bill, but I like that team. Again, running back 2 is your weak point. You know what? That's what you want your weak point to be, because look at Kyron Williams last year. You know, if you got him off of waivers and your running back 2 was your weakest position, you won your league.
Yeah.
And that happens, maybe not to that extent, but that happens a lot in fantasy football. So you can find a running back 2. Your job is to find a running back 2 before the playoffs of your league, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's do this last team. Ace Jafar, not a big fan of this team. Well, first of all, you did Gibbs Laporta, the same thing as the commenter. I love Jonathan Taylor and Gibbs. It's a great start at running back. But receiving depth looks a little sketchy here with Zay Flowers. I think it'll be fine. The Cooper, I like those two guys, but then Addison might be suspended. Plus, he's playing with Darnold. McConkey, he's playing in the preseason. So despite the hype, just worried about him. And then Hopkins, he's like 1 million years old. Curtis Samuel's injured. But my main concern here is the running back. So like the depth, at least. Like Taylor Gibbs looks great, but then his depth is like Chubb, who I guess this is decent timing for him, because he might come back, but I have my doubts that he's going to play. His only other 2 running backs are Marshawn Lloyd, AJ Dillon. Like, I just don't like Lloyd is hurt and Dillon sucks. So I don't like that. Taking a kicker in the 13th round, like you can do better than that. So yeah, I mean, I don't. Despite like he has his first 4 players that he drafted look great, but I really worry about the depth on this team. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to go into the 5th round without a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're playing 2 receivers and 1 flex, in most cases you're going to want to play 3 receivers, just because good receivers usually score more points than like those running back 20 and on types. So it'd be hard for me to start with 2 running backs. Taylor doesn't catch passes, although I know he's a great talent. I don't mind Gibbs in the 2nd round just because he is going to catch passes. But, you know, I think Zay Flowers as your wide receiver 1 is a little bit tough. I love Cooper. Addison is a good player, but, you know, even though he might not get suspended this year because his case might not be settled until I think his hearing is like October or November or something like that. So that might not get settled until after this year. So you might be looking at a suspension in 2025 with him. But I don't trust Sam Darnold to support Jefferson along with, Addison. And I know I drafted Hawkinson. Even Hawkinson will take a hit when he comes back. Again, Chubb is, we'll see what we get. If he's back by like week 5, then that's a good pick. But that's a huge question mark. I'll give him some credit though with DeAndre Hopkins. Looks like he's going to be healthy for week 1. I know he's 31, 32 years old at this point, but I take a shot on him in the 10th round. That offense should be a lot more pass happy this year with Brian Callahan there, and with Will Levis having a year under his belt. But yeah, overall, I'm not a huge fan. I'd have a really hard time not drafting a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds.
Yeah, me too. And one thing I forgot to mention is that he took Ferguson when he took Laporta in round 3. Like, when are you going to play Ferguson over him? So that could have been another running back for his depth. So, all right. Yeah, that's about it. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, Slew, thank you. 222 super chat. Thank you so much, Slew. 9.71 Bears money line, Finn's money line, Cowboys +6, and Patriots money line. Is that for that was for week 2 of the preseason. Okay, so he had the Bears won, the Dolphins won, the Cowboys they won outright, and then the Patriots. They I don't know what's going on with the Eagles this preseason. They usually don't care about the preseason, but they're 2-0. They had that bogus win with the Ravens fumbling last week, and then this one. Yeah, that was pretty rough. So sorry, Slew. Sorry that didn't cash for you, but thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. So thank you for your support always. Really, thank you so much. All right, Mike. Thank you again for coming on. It's really appreciate it. Do you want to talk about your site, NFL Rough Draft, or anything else? So yeah, floor is yours.
Yeah, so I mean, I've got NFL Rough Draft, which is basically just an NFL draft website that really picks up around draft season. The big thing I have going on now is I've got it's on my Twitter, which is at NFL Rough Draft. I've got my rankings cheat sheet for fantasy football up, and it comes with a free consultation. If they're PPR rankings, but if somebody who doesn't follow football as closely as I do has a draft coming up, which I know is a lot of people. And they want some rankings, they can check that out on my Twitter page at NFL Rough Draft. And again, I'm available for those consultations. If they have questions about individual leagues or individual situations, trades, things like that. And aside from that, just looking forward to football season 1. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, love having you on. Hopefully we can do this more often. You're a great guest to have on. So yeah, looking forward to more episodes with you. Tomorrow we'll be back with another mock draft. Our guest tomorrow is going to be a musician, our first musician guest. So that'll be interesting. And then Wednesday, I assume Kenny will be back on. Thursday we'll do a draft after the preseason games. So we'll see if I have a guest on Thursday. Usually, like when there are games and we don't know when it's going to end, it's going to be tough to have a guest on. But mock drafts all week. Once again this week, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that would be appreciated. And thank you, especially to Slew for the 222 super chat. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow. And Mike, thanks again. And I'll talk to you later.